name is Michelle Scarborough. I'm the Managing Director of the Regional Innovation Centre for Ottawa and Eastern Ontario at Oakry, which is a member of the Ontario Networks of Excellence. Welcome to this morning's panel discussion entitled Exemplary and Emerging Models in Commercialization. At the inaugural International Commercialization Forum held in Ottawa in March, a group of leaders and practitioners from 18 countries discussed exemplary practices in commercializing research outcomes and effective innovation models. Participants shared some of the most compelling novel ideas to improve the state of global innovation. At the forum's conclusion, 48 organizations with a common focus and a vision focused on openly sharing knowledge and expertise and best practices, formally establishing the International Commercialization Alliance to work together on projects with global interest. This session will provide a synopsis of thought-provoking insights gained from the discussions and overviews of the Alliance as it establishes itself and where it is going from here. Our moderator for the session is Dr. Mario Thomas. He is Senior Vice President of Strategy, Programs and Partnerships at the Ontario Centres of Excellence and the Managing Director of OCE's Centre for Commercialization of Research. Mario tells me he's an accomplished senior executive with impressive credentials in commercialization of innovation. He also tells me that he has over 30 years of experience. You'd never know that by looking at him. He looks way younger than that. In leadership roles directing corporate development, creating remarkable value for all stakeholders. Mario brings extensive experience filled with achievements driving successful development collaborations in financial ventures. And before being appointed Managing Director of the Centre for Commercialization of Research at the Ontario Centres of Excellence in April of 2009, he was a partner in the venture firm T2C2 Capital. His previous work experience includes CEO of several startup organizations, senior level positions in business development and in marketing. Please welcome with me Dr. Mario Thomas.
Thank you, Michelle. I'd like to take a moment to tell you about the International Commercialization Forum that was held in March in Ottawa. As you know, every country struggles with three basic questions related to commercialization of research outcomes. The first one is what are the exemplary practices that could or should be implemented to commercialize the research outcomes. The second question is what are the emerging models around the globe that seem to be successful? And the third question is what evidence do we have to claim that these models work? So what are the best measurement approaches? So those are the three fundamental questions that we ask ourselves here at OCE. And every month we have visitors from around the world. And I could see that every country struggles with the same question. So we invited a number of organizations to come to Ottawa to discuss this. We had people from 18 countries, and we discussed these issues for 2 days. And many of the delegates are here in the room. Many of you could not be there. The four panelists with me today were present at the forum. So the goal is to present to you the highlights of the conference in Ottawa. Now, 2 minutes on the International Commercialization Alliance. We have created at the end of this conference an ongoing organization to continue to discuss these important questions. So what we have asked are to the delegates in Ottawa, would you be willing to create such an ongoing organization? And we had a resounding yes. So we have had 48 organizations from 18 countries wanting to create this new organization squarely focused on exemplary practices, emerging commercialization models, and how to measure the success or the failures of these models. So we looked at, during the conference, at models like the Iowa model that Rich Bendis has helped put together. We have talked about Ari's model in Otaniemi, Finland. We looked at the model of Israel with NAVA, and of course our own model here in Ontario with the Ontario Network of Excellence. So with this in mind, I would like to introduce to you our panelists. So on the extreme right, I'm very glad to welcome the Honorable George Ross, Deputy Minister, Ontario Ministry of Research and Innovation, and the Deputy Minister of the Ministry of Consumer Services. George has been instrumental in developing and advancing Ontario's innovation agenda. He has managed key initiatives to advance Ontario's position as a leading innovation jurisdiction, including establishing the Centre for Research and Innovation in the Bioeconomy and completing the review of Ontario's commercialization network. He has also been responsible for leading major government investments crucial to enhancing Ontario's knowledge economy, including the $205 million Ontario Venture Capital Fund and the $250 million Ontario Emerging Technology Fund aimed at investing in Ontario's strong, innovative companies. Thank you, George, for joining us today. Our next panelist on my immediate right is Nava Swirsky-Sofer, co-chair of Nano Israel. Shalom, Nava.
Shalom.
Nava is a seasoned venture capitalist and senior executive with international experience spanning America, Europe, and Israel. She is recognized worldwide as a leader in the fields of innovation, venture capital, and technology transfer, and is frequently invited speaker in international forum on these topics. She is a member of the boards of several privately held companies, chairperson of Cardiosonic Limited, and vice chair of the Ontario Government Centre of Excellence for Commercialization and Research. She is also a founding member of the International Commercialization Alliance and a board member of the International Commercialization Alliance. Welcome, Nava. Our next panelist is on the right to Nava is Ari Yksikoski. Ari has made the trip all the way from Finland. He is the CEO of Finland's Otaniemi Marketing Limited. Ari is a professional commercializer, international brand builder and marketeer, startup company growth advisor, generalist on nanotechnology, open innovation, science, and technology parks, high-tech ecosystems, and a few other things along the way. Ari is currently employed by Otaniemi Marketing as its CEO to internationally build a brand and market Northern Europe's biggest technology hub, Otaniemi in Espoo, Finland. Ari is also a founding member of the International Commercialization Alliance. Thank you, Ari, for joining us. Our last panelist is Rich Bendis. Rich is president and CEO and founder of Innovation America. Rich is a successful entrepreneur, corporate executive, venture capitalist, investment banker, innovation and technology-based economic development leader, international speaker, and consultant in innovation and economy building. He is the founding president of Innovation America, a global innovation intermediary focused on accelerating the growth of the entrepreneurial innovation economy in America. He also serves as the chairman of the Innovation Philadelphia Board of Directors, a public-private partnership dedicated to growing Philadelphia's wealth and workforce. Rich is also a founding member of the International Commercialization Alliance. Welcome, Rich, and thank you for being with us today. So as you can see, we have an awesome panel with a wealth of experience and knowledge in the field of innovation. The way I'm going to run this panel is have some questions for our panelists that are directed to some of the key points that were raised in Ottawa 2 months ago. So I will ask these questions. After each question, I would like the audience, you, to ask questions. This is your opportunity to get feedback from 4 of the top experts in the world about global innovation. So I would encourage you to ask questions after the comments made by each of our first panelists. So my first question, and this was really the basis of what was discussed in Ottawa, is what works and what doesn't work. We debated this question a lot, and I would ask you to each take 2 or 3 minutes, no more, to describe in your context, in your knowledge, one remarkable example of success and one remarkable example of failure. And failures are important because this is how we learn and we build for the next success. So why don't we start with you, Nava?
Thank you, Mario. Is this on? Thank you, Mario. Maybe what I would give as one of the many examples of success in commercializing technology in Israel is an issue that I've been asked about a lot here in Canada and in this context with so many academic institutions present, and that is the story of technology transfer from academic institutions into industry. Israel, despite its small size and not nearly as many academic institutions as the city of Toronto, I have now learned, has a remarkable success. It's been doing technology transfer for over 50 years nationally. It has 2 of the top 10 or 12 tech transfer companies in the world. This is in absolute dollar terms. I had the privilege of running Yisum, which is a tech transfer company of the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. It is the largest university in Israel. It does 1/3 of all research in the country. But having said that, it has a research budget of about $100 million, which is a fraction of most leading universities in this country. We were able, in a short period of time, to double the revenues, get them to $60 million a year, based on, of course, past successes, but also a very careful mining of the portfolio that the university had to offer and some dedicated tools that we put in place to support particular industries and to choose those projects which we thought were particularly promising and take them ahead. There are a number of success factors. One is structural. You structure your tech transfer as a company where people have a vested interest in its success. Their compensation mechanism is based on success. They are not university employees. They don't have tenure. They have to perform. We own the IP. I know that's not the case in Waterloo. It's not the case in some other universities here. It is the case in most successful university tech transfer around the world. We focus very clearly on market needs, working closely with industry to make sure that you're actually giving them what it is they're looking for. at the end of the day, you have to be quite selective with the things that you choose to push ahead beyond the initial chance that's given to almost all technologies. I think those are general themes that go across the board and account for some of the successes. And just so you get an idea, we're talking of over $10 billion a year in product revenues, products that come out of Israeli academia. We're talking of hundreds of millions of dollars in licensing revenues on an annual basis. So these are very big numbers, which can be achieved. If I'm asked to look at a failure, and you know, Israelis don't like to talk about failures, they're all about success, but I think that I could point to a few examples of companies that were very technology focused and not focused enough on what the market really needs. I was looking at the news this morning, and one such company, which I don't wish to name, but it started out with a very cool idea. Excellent people, successful entrepreneurs. This was not their first venture, but they somehow missed the boat. The market was moving in a different direction. The technology they had to offer wasn't attractive enough. They burnt a fair deal of money and crashed with this company. As it happens, Google just picked up the IP yesterday for a song. So I think that points to, again, a more global theme of addressing market needs and keeping a very, very close tab on where the market is going, not just when you start out, but as you move along, so that you can adjust your course along the way.
Thank you, Nava. Ari, we have heard about Nava's success story in Israel. Could you paint for us how does this contrast with the success story that you can describe for us from Finland?
Sure. Thank you, Mario. Something that I could give as an example of stuff that really works is a project called Innovation Mill. It's an open innovation, internal technology-based project where a big corporation, in this case Nokia, opened about 5,000 patents and other IPR that were being unused, different killed business cases and other things at Nokia that would otherwise this IPR would have just been gathering dust on the shelves of Nokia and resulting in costs to keep those patents alive. In this case, Nokia opened this up so that they would be used for creation of new startup companies. So the government put in some money, the city put in some money, and private investors have started investing in these companies. So far, the private money is already double the amount of public money that has been spent, and this has already created 20 plus new startup companies. Many of them are growing real fast. You can go and check some of them online. Go and check PowerKiss, it's a wireless charging company, or go and check Mobile Sports Tracker, or go and check their corporation in home automation. None of these companies would even exist if it wasn't for this project, where one is turning dust into cash. Another thing that really works is virtual incubation. Spinno Entrepreneurship Center and Alta Venture Garage in Otaniemi are big creators of new companies. We're a really small place, 2 times 2 kilometers with 32,000 people, 5,000 researchers, 800 companies, 25 research institutions, a couple of universities, 110 different nationalities. But anyways, these virtual incubation programs that are being run in Otaniemi result in 40 to 70 new startup companies every year. And that's a good number. And we're getting a lot of risk investments into these companies too. But the key here is it has to be virtual. Stuff that doesn't work, I would say would be, well, patenting for patenting's sake. Many universities and research institutions do that because they're required to, maybe they're measured by number of patents, but you know, that doesn't necessarily work if you don't have a good IPR strategy to go with it. You need to be building patent families and not just some you know, lone patents that don't have a chance of success. That way they would be also more commercializable. Silos, of course, don't work for business innovation. And I would say, well, everybody understands that. You have to bust those silos and get everybody working together in order to get some success. But that goes into many different levels. And the third thing that doesn't work is when top-down doesn't meet bottom-up. You need things that are happening bottom-up, like we have Aalto Entrepreneurship Society, a student initiative that started as a Facebook group 3 years ago. Now it has over 4,000 members, and it has become really a force that has forced the university there to start looking at innovation in a new way. And that's actually the organization that now runs the Aalto Venture Garage, which is running virtual incubation programs. So there you have some examples of success and failure.
Thank you very much, Ari. Rich, in the USA, there are hundreds of examples of success, probably as many of failures. In your experience, could you point us to one remarkable success in this space of innovation and one remarkable failure?
I'm going to take a little different approach because I was stimulated by attending a couple of your panels this morning. One was the National Angel Capital Association and what the angels are looking for, and then the pitches that were being given for the elevator pitches. So my approach, and I'm going to talk about best practices in university commercialization later with a follow-up question, but I'm going to talk about personal experiences that I've had in investing in things that have worked and not worked and what the differences were, very briefly. In America, we have a saying, do you invest in the jockey or do you invest in the horse? How many of you have heard of that saying? Okay, so the key is the jockey's the entrepreneur, the horse is basically the technology or the science. And one experience I had, I was approached by an unbelievable technologist and scientist who had developed a robotic arm with force feedback that was used in the recovery of the Titanic as well as the cleanup of 3 Mile Island in Pennsylvania. Very high visibility. And he said, I need money to grow my business and grow globally. What he basically wanted was access to capital to actually become a business and just be, other than just be a laboratory producing technology. What I found very quickly was we had a technologist who basically had a hobby of perfecting technology all of the time, had no desire whatsoever of developing a global business model, and he wanted money to basically spend more time in the laboratory perfecting his science. So from a standpoint, I would view that as a failure. The company still exists today. It has significant technology. It is what I would call a lifestyle business and is never going to realize its full potential because it was not willing to take the business advice from business professionals and held everything proprietarily internally, would not share that knowledge with potential joint venture partners, and was never going to be able to make that a global success. Second one that was successful was a university technology that was developed around a software application to automate the management of the cash flow within supermarkets. It was identified by an entrepreneur as very successful. It was transferred to that entrepreneur about 15 years ago, and the entrepreneur developed a working model and actually sold some applications, software as a service, to the supermarket industry. He became very comfortable, and he actually developed a lifestyle business, but another entrepreneur saw the global potential for this software application and actually put an investment team together to buy him out. I happen to be fortunate enough to be a member of that investment team, and the investment team, we bet on the jockey. We did not bet on the horse because we knew the jockey understood the market potential on a global basis for growing this. Today, 5 years later after the investment, it's gone from a $2 million business to a $25 million business. The market cap, it was acquired for $2 million. It has an $85 million market cap, and the whole difference in the world is the jockey came in, applied business models to it, hired a professional team, a professional board of directors, was not in rapture only with the technology, and understood how to fulfill and meet market potential. So I guess the question becomes jockeys and horses. Sometimes there might be good horses out there, but unless you get a good jockey and business team to get around it, it is not going to work. So I will get into better practices around university tech transfer and commercialization in our later questions.
Thank you, Rich. George, you were at the forum in Ottawa. You have heard the successes and failures from Israel, Finland, and Rich's perspective on what make a venture successful. Based on this, in the context of us here in Ontario, what do you believe is working, and what do you believe is not working so well?
So thank you very much, and I'm going to pick up on the horse racing analogy because I thought that was great. Our job in government is really to set the race course for the horses and the jockeys to race on. And so you know, when we look at these things from a government perspective, we really think about the business climate, the policy construct that supports innovation, entrepreneurship to occur in society. And I guess what I would observe, based on our history here in Ontario, is there's probably 5 key attributes of organizations that seem to be successful in the commercialization space. First of all, they have to be market focused, and they have to be globally oriented and deeply networked with both the financial community and the business community. That's really, really important, and I think there's been a long history in Canada of having tech transfer organizations that aren't connected with the private sector and the financial markets the way they should be. The second attribute I would comment on is these organizations and the activities that go on in them need to be based on a really authentic understanding of the region that they're working in. What are the strengths? What are the academic opportunities, the talent base, quality of life, those sorts of things. So based on authentic understanding of the region that they're working in, because innovation really does happen in a piece of geography. Third thing I would say is there needs to be a critical mass of IP and talent built around these commercialization activities, because there has to be the ability of the people that are supporting the entrepreneurs to really focus on excellence and things that have market potential and really have potential for customers. The fourth thing I would say, and I think this is self-evident, is the support, the resourcing, the leadership in these organizations needs to really be top talent based. So unless these organizations are led by people that really are connected into global marketplace and understand business development, business opportunities, they're probably not going to succeed. And the last thing I would say, the fifth attribute, is with respect to the programming. And there really needs to be intensive programming that's focused on supporting the entrepreneurs through the whole growth cycle of their companies. So to me, that's a race course that we should be focused on to make the horses and the jockeys successful.
Thank you very much, George, and the other panelists. I'd like to turn around to the audience. You have heard several stories of success and things that don't work so well. There are 2 stand-up mics. We have 3 roving microphones. So if you have a question, if you want to raise your hand, Ian.
Further for the race course analogy, where do you find your jockeys? Canada has a terrific supply of horses, but we don't train entrepreneurs, and maybe they're born and we can't find them. I know Startup Nation, I read that book, and I know they come out of the Israeli military, but we don't have that kind of military. But is there a way to encourage young people to be risk takers and entrepreneurs while they're going through university, so when they pop out and have ideas, they're not afraid to do this? Because the shortage seems to be who will run the company. The reason for the failures, as I know them, is they chose the wrong people, just as you all said. So what can we do in Canada to increase our supply? Because we have an enormous demand.
Okay. Thank you, Ian. So the question is, how can we grow jockeys? Rich, you have a comment on this?
I have a comment on a new model that's been emerging for over like the last 5 years in the U.S. And we don't have enough jockeys either, to be honest with you. And especially, I came out of Kansas, and if you look in the Midwest, we don't have a lot of serial entrepreneurs there. They created a program called Pipeline about 5 years ago in partnership with the Kauffman Foundation, which is the largest foundation in the world that supports entrepreneurship. And Pipeline is an entrepreneurial immersion program, which is not one of these accelerators like a Y Combinator where you go in for 12 weeks and you basically get immersed. This is a one-year immersion program with people that have aspirations to be a successful entrepreneur, have shown some attributes, but have not been successful yet. And what it is, the people have to make a very dedicated effort to be in the program. It's a very selective program. You have to compete to get into it. And for example, 100 people applied and only 10 to 12 get accepted. So at the end of the day, though, those people that get accepted get exposed to the most successful and experienced entrepreneurs, not just from Kansas, but from all over the United States. They take trips to Boston and Silicon Valley. They experience entrepreneurial culture firsthand. It is not the only way to do this, but I'm saying sometimes the question is, are entrepreneurs born or can they be made? And I believe you can actually train people to be more experienced in entrepreneurship, and you don't have to have it built into your DNA when you come out of the womb to be a successful entrepreneur.
Thank you. Ari, is there anything similar to this in Finland or something that you believe will deliver the same kind of outcomes?
Yes, it helps. It helps if student entrepreneurship initiatives are being supported. It helps if you start facilitating different business angel networks. And I went to Kitchener and Waterloo on Tuesday, and they do have those kinds of things happening there. But to sort of like where to find the jockey, the beginning of it, I think, is that send your kids abroad. Alta Venture Garage, one of those places where you have a virtual incubation happening. It's currently being run by Nathalie Godet from Canada. So she came to Ottawa as a student to Alta University, and now she's becoming a jockey. And then, I don't know, when you have big corporations and when people want to do something else than, you know, spend 20 years in the same corporation, they can be really good jockeys, really. They have gone through a really tough business school, if you like. So all those Nortel executives out there, many of them would be really good jockeys for startup companies. Yeah. And you have to somehow create a culture where it's cool to be an entrepreneur.
Thank you. George, what's your take on growing jockeys?
So I've got to tell you, I'm very angry at Rich now for this jockey analogy. This is Canada. We're supposed to be using hockey analogies. Okay. We're supposed to be talking about following the puck and everything. That's fine.
Jockey's almost like hockey.
That's it. A really interesting question, because when we first started into the research and innovation agenda here in Ontario, some of our biggest concerns had to do with business culture and orientation of both the business community and the academic community towards this. And I must tell you, over the last couple of years, I'm not as concerned about all of that as I have been in the past, because we are seeing an unbelievable uptake in some of our programming. We're getting thousands and thousands of young entrepreneurs trying to get access to the support programs that we provide here in Ontario. So my sense is, and I don't have any data to support this, is there is a latent drive there. There's a part of the community here that is very focused on building economic opportunities for themselves. And I'm sensing a shift in culture in this province anyway. So it may be not as critical as perhaps we'd thought about it previously. But I mean, I think for government, what that does is it makes us think about how do you support those people through the education system, how do you make sure your curriculum in universities and colleges is relevant, and how do you equip these intermediary organizations to actually support them as they're growing their businesses?
Thank you, Joe. Rich, just
real
you
quick
have a comment
follow-on
on George?
Is that take a look around you. What impresses me is this discovery meeting with 2,500 people coming together. The ability to network and be exposed to the experienced people, industry, and intermediaries that are in this facility under one roof at one time is amazing. And if you are an entrepreneur and don't take advantage of it, shame on you, because these kind of events don't occur around the world and sometimes even in the United States. So I compliment OCE and the ministry for this event, because this is a very excellent example of how you can help nurture entrepreneurs.
Thank you, Rich. Nava, and then one last comment from Ari.
Well, I was going to say to Ian that we can give you some. We have no shortage of entrepreneurs, so anytime. But on a more serious note, I've been involved in Canada for a number of years now, and I have the privilege of sitting on Mario's board and watching some of the programs as they evolve, or have evolved over the last 2 to 3 years. And what I've noticed is that with very focused initiatives that are not very expensive but target the right population, you can make a very large difference. A specific example is the Embedded Executive Program that the CCR offers. That has to be coupled with a target audience of, to my mind, students coming out of graduate school, so that you create entrepreneurship, for example, taking their graduate project, if it's viable, and turning it into a startup company. You make that a viable option. You make risk-taking potentially rewarding, and certainly failure a real option that's not penalized. You couple that with giving them the support that a seasoned executive that's actually dedicated to the company for 6 months can give, tremendous value. And you've really created a whole new group of potential entrepreneurs who have started out. They'll succeed or fail. But as long as failure is an acceptable option, as long as there's a support system around them that will then let them move on to the next, because that really is, at the end of the day, what makes entrepreneurship a viable option, is the possibility of failure and the ability to get right back in the game after you've failed. So I think if you do that, and some of that's already been done, and I think that's what George is referring to as well, and that's what you're seeing here, is people who are willing to take that risk because the support systems are being put around them to make that transition a little more comfortable and to make the next stage viable.
Thank you, Nava. A short comment from Mary, then we'll move to another question.
This is a really short comment. If you're a startup entrepreneur here in this event, and if you walk out here with less than 50 new business cards, then it's no good. That was a comment from Richard.
Thank you, Ari. We'll take one question from Suzanne Fortier, and then the gentleman who has been standing there. Okay.
I'm really going to get out of the horse and jockey analogy, because I want to talk about you. The people here on the stage, part of this panel, you play an incredible role, and I would make the assumption that you are a key player in whether it's a success or a failure, having a good eye, as you mentioned, being selective and so on. So in your experience, because you network very extensively among your peers, do we have enough people like you? Where do we get this talent? How do we grow this talent? Where do we find it? Are you a rare species that there's not enough of? You may have the jockey and the horse, but not the people who see how to put these together.
Thank you, Suzanne. Rich?
Basically, there's been no life plan to actually end up doing what I'm doing. And if you really look at my background, started with large corporations, okay, and then got involved in an entrepreneurial ventures, got involved in helping technology-based economic development organizations and supporting government at the regional and the local level, and basically been an investor for 25 years. So to be honest with you, there's no formal academic program or training to train the backgrounds. And Nava and I talked last night at dinner, similar background. So the key is that you need people who have multidisciplinary experience and actual life experiences, who have actually been there, have had to make payrolls and make cash flow, to be able to be empathetic in working with entrepreneurs. And the other thing is also have been a failure in their own life. Because at the end of the day, failing has to be accepted within your culture. It's okay to fail. And I've had many experiences where I've made bad investments or I've made bad decisions, but hopefully you learn from those. So I guess the key is, I think people like we have on the stage exist right there in the audience, okay? But maybe they didn't think their career path should lead them to doing things that have a social mission and benefit, as well, and a public good, as well as potentially find ways to enhance their personal careers. And I think there's a nice mix there for people to get involved in.
Do we all agree with Rich's comments, or do you have a different viewpoint?
I don't know how different it is. I agree with Rich. I might want to add a little to that. Certainly the diverse background and the issue of failure we've discussed before. I'm not sure how you can do this, okay? So to this I have no answer. But one of the things that creates entrepreneurship is when life is a little less comfortable than it typically is in Canada. You've got it good. And that tends to put people on a more comfortable path. And entrepreneurship is not a comfortable path. So I'm not advocating, squeezing Canada into the size of the state of Israel, creating enemies all around and, starting out again. That clearly doesn't work. But I think that you have to somehow force some of these elements upon the population that you'd like to influence. And I don't mean that to sound quite as bad as it sounds, but I'll give you an example of sort of positive enforcement that we found works. We have in Israel a national nanotechnology program. It was put in place only 5 years ago. It's got amazing results on the commercial side. Now, why is that? Because when it was originally put in place with funding for academic centers, 6 academic centers, there was a set of outcomes measures attached to that funding. And the outcomes measures were not just publications in leading academic journals. There were also patents, there were also commercial agreements, there was also the creation of startup companies. It was a whole set of, a limited set, but a set of measures that speaks to the commercial side as well. So, and if you didn't adhere to these measures and you didn't produce the results, you didn't get funding. Your funding was actually stopped, and it's reviewed on an annual basis. Now, that goes a long way towards making people, quote unquote, uncomfortable in the sense that they have to produce results in areas which might not be inherently obvious certainly for an academic. So that's what I mean. You need a certain amount of friction to get people out of their immediate comfort zone and into where they think out of the box and they take more risk and they become a little more entrepreneurial. I think that's an additional element to creating the diversity which could be. And that can be done, because that can be implemented into programs which you have in creating that framework that forces people to do something a little different.
Thank you, Nava.
You all ended up talking about IP as one of the keys to success, but I was wondering what your opinion was on more open information transfer, like open source software, for example.
Rich?
So your question is, do you believe that open source software is an effective vehicle or tool for promoting entrepreneurial ventures and working together? I can't hear you.
Or is it like one or the other?
No, it's not one or the other. I think basically the world is going towards open innovation and open source today. And based on technology and networks that are available, you have the ability to accelerate the rate of your commercialization to determine whether something may be good. And you can look at people from around the world that might be able to add value to your idea, your concept, your technology, or your product. So I am a proponent for open source and open innovation. And if you look at, to be honest with you, if you look at the aviation industry and the Boeing 777 aircraft, it has 9 countries involved, unbelievable cultures and foreign languages and currencies, and all of these parts and assemblies and software and technology is developed for all over the world and comes together in Seattle, and we all get on this plane that is an open innovation product, which is one of the most sophisticated and technological products in the world, and we all get on it and fly and trust it. So it proves that open innovation can work if you have a process, system, and standards that everybody has to comply with.
George, what is your view on this question of open innovation, particularly in software?
So we've had a little bit of experience with this in Ontario. We've supported a number of initiatives that are open innovation based, and the industry I'm more familiar with is the pharmaceutical industry, and I think anybody that watches that industry globally knows it's going through some sort of fundamental change in the way it sources innovation, and it's not at all clear how they intend to do the early discovery that's necessary to build the commercial products down the pipeline. And in our view here in Ontario is that will end up on some sort of an open innovation platform for drug discovery, and I think that applies to other things as well, like software. So for us as policy thinkers and program deliverers in the commercialization space, we need to think ahead of those trends and try to figure out how we can support those models as they emerge out of the institutions.
Thank you. Neva mentioned a couple of minutes ago the importance of measuring what we do, measuring the outcomes, measuring the impact that these programs have, so that we can stand up and say that we have been successful. One fundamental question that was discussed at the forum is what are or what should be evidence-based approaches to measuring performance. We debated this in a breakout session. I know that here in Canada, it's a question that every government asks, how do we measure success? Not monitoring activities or auditing the activities, but truly measuring the impact. So I'd like to ask Rich, what's your view on that? How should we measure success?
I think there's 2 things that need to be measured, and the one thing, it relates to your commercialization initiative or project, and then the second would be the commercialization entities that are charged with helping people commercialize their ideas, okay? From a commercialization entity or scientist or a researcher or an entrepreneur, the best ways to measure are, has something been created that someone is willing to buy? Is revenue been generated, okay? Have other people's money been invested in this idea outside of your own? If other people were willing to invest, that means that they believe that something might be commercializable or viable for
follow-on investment.
A follow-on investment, right? Can something be scaled? Can it be scaled to where it can be mass-produced, mass-sold to money markets, and can you generate a profit from it? Those are very easy metrics to look at from a commercialization project or an idea. From the standpoint, if we're looking as innovation intermediaries, as an organization like OCE or Nava's organization, what are the metrics that we should look at there? Well, it relates to how many of those commercialization projects have achieved that level of success. Not just how many we have worked with, but how many really have generated measurable outcomes to where we have made a difference in helping them create something that is into the market, has generated revenues. The other thing is, has it generated jobs that are going to generate taxes, that are going to generate returns? And the key is sustainability. Have you created a sustainable model that can generate returns that can be reinvested in additional commercialization or entrepreneurial ideas? So the key is, how do you get this 360 from idea, from proof of concept all the way to commercial success to reinvention and reinvestment so that you have completed the cycle?
George, would you agree with the thoughts that Rich is expressing?
Absolutely. And what I really liked about Rich's response was he initially focused on the business metrics, and that's really what this is about. And I think, you know, from our seat in government, we should never lose sight of that. Commercialization happens in the private sector, it's market-based, and those are the things that really count. I think for government, and government has invested heavily in this, there's really only two things that count. It's noticeable macroeconomic benefit from this. So GDP growth that you can chart and governments can use to explain why they're investing taxpayers' money in this space as opposed to social services or healthcare. Very, very important. And the subset of that that's absolutely critical in the near-term period is job creation. And that particular one is the one that plagues all of us that are working in this space, because there's an unrelenting desire for governments to hear about good news on the job front. And what we do is kind of a messy ecosystem. You know, we're at the coalface between universities, the private sector, and government, and it doesn't necessarily translate easily into short-term job numbers. There's a real importance, as we're tracking these things over time, to monitor the success stories and get down to a very, very low level and talk about the successes that are happening on a regional basis and company by company. And that's why sessions like this are so important, because you're able to profile what's happening at the company level.
Thank you, George. Ari, any view from what you do in Finland to measure success, and whether you can say that this has worked, this has not worked? How do you do it?
Well, we've been using pretty much similar measurements as what Richard was talking here about. But I wanted to point out two things about measuring impact. First one would be careful with what you measure, because what you measure pretty much defines also the outcome of it. And well, what are if you take directly the measures that they are using in Kansas, or that they're using in Israel, or what we're using in Finland, they don't necessarily, you can't necessarily use them to 100% here. You have to think about it. What is it that you want as an outcome? Think, what do you want as an outcome, and then build your measurements according to that. Yeah. Secondly, when it comes to actually then reporting, that shouldn't be done by those who carry out the project. It should be a third party, somebody neutral, and the method that is being used should be scientific. One of the problems sometimes with programs is that jobs created, that's a really typical measure. But oftentimes the number, how many jobs were created in the project, comes from off the top of somebody's head who was in the project. And it's not really based on any scientific method. Mm-hmm. And it can't be that way. It just has to be, there are lots of different sources that you can go to, and there are organizations that can dig out that information. But you need some kind of like an audit method for that. So this would be my two comments. Be careful with what you measure, yeah, and be scientific and use third parties.
Okay. Excuse me, I've got to take this. Hey, Alan? Listen, I'm busy right now. I'm in the middle of a panel. Yeah, this question on regional adaptability. Yeah, I will ask it, okay? Talk to you soon. This is Alan Barrow from Cambridge University. He was at the panel, and he wants to make sure that we ask that question about regional adaptability. We have seen certain things work in Finland, others in the US, in Israel. So the question is, can we take what works in Finland, the IP mill, for example, or the Iowa model, and say we're going to put this in the Kingston area and make it work. Do you think that these models can be transported, or are they unique and specific to the region because of the culture, because of the community? So Alan would like to know, what are your views on this?
Mario, I think that was the breakout session I chaired in Ottawa, and the answer is, of course, clearly no. There is no one magic prescription that can be applied across geographies and regions. And unfortunately, you have to resort to the rather more painstaking task of defining a set of criteria and a set of measures and a set of successes that make up that one success story, and then pick and choose from that menu what may be applied in your region. And it's a lot less appealing than the idea of a magic bullet that can simply be applied elsewhere, but unfortunately it's the reality of life. You have in Canada certain characteristics that are different from Finland, that's different from the US, that's different across the regions of the US for sure. I mean, the US is not one country when it comes to innovation, as we know very well. Even Israel, which is really small, has its own little micro regions. I know you'd laugh, it's like a neighborhood in Toronto, but what have you. These are different regions with very different characteristics, and they grow different types of success stories. And you know, I actually promised Mario he would get this at the end of the presentation, because, you know, it's hardcover, it doesn't travel very well in your carry-on. But it's worth a read. For those who can't see, it's a book called Startup Nation. I don't actually get any royalties on this, so you know there's no vested interest. But they set out to find out what makes the Israeli success story tick, and they've identified a whole number of success factors, a few failures, and that's just one example of trying to decipher what makes a certain economy tick, but only bits of that are relevant to what you do here or in Finland or in the US or elsewhere.
Okay. Ari, could we take the IP mill in Otaniemi and make it work here in Ontario, do you think?
In some places, yes. Now that I already told you that, I went to Ottawa and Kitchener. I noticed many similarities between Finland and that area. To start with, everybody is a Protestant. All the churches are basically Lutheran, and you know, all that, and you know, that's exactly like Finland. We're 90% Lutheran. So there we go into organizations like Communitech and Velocity. I mean, like, they would probably be able to carry out projects that run after some blueprints that we may have. Or take Oakry in Ottawa. We've been very pleased with working together with them. But this really comes down to cultural dimensions. There are a lot of scientists there who have written about cultural dimensions. You have your Hofstede, you have Trompreneurs, Hampton Turner. It's really good stuff. You should read that. And compare then a model that comes from a certain country and certain culture with your cultural dimensions, and maybe you have to do some adjustments. But the Innovation Bill, I think it would definitely work here in Canada.
Thank you. George, in your work you visit many other organizations, you see different models. What's your view on the transportability of some models? In reverse, for example, could we take the Waterloo model that works and implant this in Finland, or vice versa?
So I think when you look at these models globally, you recognize that they're all built on some common pieces of foundation or substrate, and this whole business is really driven by entrepreneurs, and those are talented people, and talented people have clear expectations about the quality of life that they expect. And so the quality of place, the the diversity of population, the access to top quality educational institutions, general rule of law, all those sorts of things, I think are as important as any of the particular programs. And you know, when you look around at the successful models, they're really in places where they attract top talent. Waterloo's a great example here in Ontario, as is Toronto and other places as well. So I think, you know, general lifestyle, quality of place, and the business climate are really, really vital to this. So I think if you have those foundations, a lot of things can happen. But if you try to invent this from nothing, not a lot of success. I think we've seen examples of that where governments have tried to put innovation parks down where there isn't the other attributes, and they don't succeed very often.
Thank you, George. We've got a few minutes left. I would like, this gentleman has been standing at the mic for forever, so if you could ask the questions and we'll direct it appropriately.
Certainly. So I want to move now back from the jockeys to the horses, and I'll pose my question specifically to Nava and to Ari, although the others can certainly respond. Israel and Finland, respectively, are relatively small nations, but both of them are hotbeds of technology innovation and commercial success, certainly on the technology front. One is a northern climate, one is a relatively southern climate, and you know, obviously, as we heard in the last responses to the question, that they are each unique and every place is unique. My question is focused on actually the technologies that come out. Because IP, the creative genius that comes out of your institutions, can be applied either to opportunities, problems locally, or might be even more relevant to other geographies, other destination markets. Sometimes they're generic, they are global. Nokia obviously sells everywhere in the world and very well, but other products are very specific to target. Other products are specific to target markets. I wonder what you do in each of your markets to connect entrepreneurs and the IP that they bring to the market with potential users in other jurisdictions and other parts of the world. We are global distributors. We just actually picked up the rights to an Israeli company. We'd love more. I welcome business cards. But what I want to find out, and that was serendipitous how we got that opportunity, how does Finland, how does Israel, and maybe others, connect the entrepreneurs with the ultimate markets to facilitate that bonding?
Nava, Ari, who would like to address the question?
You're asking specifically about the mechanisms of connecting the entrepreneurs with the distributors? Is that the question?
With the distributors and with the ultimate markets.
Okay. Well, I think that's probably true for Finland as well, but since we have no local market to speak of, any Israeli entrepreneur, any invention automatically goes out to look for the market elsewhere. That, by the way, is a very big difference between Israel and the US and also Canada, because there just isn't a local market, so that's not an issue. In going out there, there are a number of tools that are made available that people sometimes use. You know, the obvious one is trade fairs, which people go to on a very regular basis because, again, they need that access to the world market. There are various government organizations that can provide support for specifically this type of thing in the form of grants, in the form of specific support for trade fairs. There are sort of national booths. There are various organizations that will offer space for smaller companies. So various forms of sponsorship offered by, again, various branches of government to enable you to do that. One of the very important elements of getting investment from a top VC is exactly that, the access to the right clients in the world market. So again, it can come through your investors. It can come through, well, networks that people build. But I guess what's important here is is that it's embedded into your initial business plan. You have to go out there and find the clients elsewhere. And I think that is actually a very good lesson to apply here as well, because it's so easy here to find a local market, and then you tend to postpone that to a later stage.
One last comment from Ari, and after that I'm afraid that we have to turn it to Michel to close the session. It's already 12 o'clock noon. Ari.
I would say that in addition to what Nava was just saying, we're also like very much an export-driven economy because we have a small local market, although the Baltic Sea region market is about 200 million people. But it all starts with internationalism. It starts with good education in different cultures, geography, history, and so forth, so that you grow up understanding that it's a big world out there. And I think it's important that you send your kids abroad to university. Student exchange programs are excellent because that way those to-be entrepreneurs, they're already connected when they start their company. Then it's much easier. And then, of course, every single place on this planet has an invest-in agency or something. So working with them is a big help when you're going anywhere. So those three things. And if anybody has any questions about that we didn't have time to answer, you can spot us easily. I guess now you know what we look like, so come and ask.
Thank you, Ari. Michel, I'll turn it over to you to close the session.
Great. Well, I am not going to spend time wrapping up, but I would suggest that if you do have questions, these wonderful panelists are going to be roaming around throughout lunch and beyond. So by all means, grab them and spend some quality time. I would like to extend my thanks to you, Mario, as well as to our panelists, Richard Bendis, George Ross, Nava Swirsky, Soffer, and Ari. I'm going to totally mess up your last name, Ari. I apologize in advance. Huchkowski? Oh, good. I got it right. Good. I'm going to practice. I do have a small token of our appreciation for you being panelists today, so I'll give that to you as we exit the stage. I'd also like to thank the audience for joining us here today and for your interest and participation. This has been a very exciting panel for us. The panel has in fact been videotaped and is available later on the Discovery website, so please feel free to go there and download it. That concludes our keynote panel discussion this morning. I urge you to explore the trade show floor, and I think we're going to grab lunch now. So you can start making your way over to lunch and then come back to look at all of the great exhibits that are here, both the companies and the partners on the academic and government side. I urge you also to return to this theater at 2:15 for an exciting presentation by Michael Paulin on the field of biomimicry, which is an emerging discipline that offers architectural solutions inspired by nature. So I hope you can join us for that presentation. That concludes our panel today, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the lunch. Thank you.